Welcome, anime fans and the anime curious, to Where There's a Weeb, There's a Way, a podcast series in which a seasoned otaku and a newbie attempt to put together an anime canon. We're going to be taking a look at some of the most influential shows and films, along with some more modern curiosities to help break a newcomer into the medium. We're your hosts, Grace and Chris. Yeah, so today we are heading on down to Nerve headquarters in New Tokyo 3, and we're going to talk about Neon Genesis Evangelion.
The episode I've most been looking forward to doing of this entire project, really. I'm terribly excited to talk about the show today.
Was this whole podcast just to entice me to watch Neon Genesis Evangelion?
Well, the whole reason why I wanted to get you to watch anime in the first place was so we could watch Neon Genesis Evangelion, but I knew I needed to kind of get you properly into the medium first.
Yeah, it's like slowly raising the temperature on a pot of water.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. We've slowly got there. We're ranking up the weird, and we got to the end of Utada. And after taking a bit of a break by watching Snafu Season 3, which we'll probably talk about in a bonus episode, which, depending on how I feel, you might have already listened to, we decided to go even weirder and go to Neon Genesis Evangelion. Like, what more can be said at this point? What can our lowly podcast ranked 100 on the animation and manga ranks on Apple Podcasts? What can we contribute to the cultural juggernaut that is Neon Genesis Evangelion, known locally as Shinseki Evangelion? Mm-hmm. That's a rhetorical question, and I do not expect an answer. So yeah, Neon Genesis Evangelion. Damn, without a doubt, one of the most iconic animes ever created. You know, it's often credited with saving the anime genre.
I've read that.
Yeah, often credited with saving the anime TV industry. Released between 1995 and 1996 in its native Japan. It's created by one Hideaki Anno, who had previously worked at Gainax, which is a animation studio we've come across before with Gurren Lagann, which is often regarded as kind of being like a spiritual successor to Evangelion, which is interesting now that you've seen both shows.
It is.
And yeah, so Hideaki Anno kind of cut his teeth at Gainax before doing Evangelion. The most popular show he did before Evangelion was Nadia of the Blue Water, which I've also heard is really, really good, but I've not seen it. That's because it's almost impossible to watch legally here in the UK. But Neon Genesis Evangelion is the show that made his name, and I think that's absolutely fair to say. So this is my fourth time watching the series. I'm a massive fan. This is probably my favourite anime TV series. It's also a strong contender for like my top 10 favourite just TV shows in general. This is Grace's first time watching it. Mm-hmm. The first rodeo with Evangelion.
Yep.
And it was quite the emotional, very fast experience.
Yeah, we kind of tore through it.
We completely tore through this series.
So my thing is, I am really terrible. I love mystery stories, books, shows, but also I'm terrible at them because I will just want to race through to the end to figure out, to like have an idea of what is happening. I can't pace myself with them. I have to just steam ahead. And it's the same every like kind of compelling mystery book I read, every kind of TV show that's even got a little bit of a mystery at its centre. I can't watch them or read them or consume them slowly. So yeah.
So we blasted through Evangelion in about in about a week, which was wild. It was a wild ride, definitely. So I mean, like, obviously, the show has a huge amount of pedigree involved. I said Hideaki Anno has become those kind of like legendary cult figures in the world of anime, mostly because of how he approached the production of Evangelion, which kind of put a greater emphasis on the psychological underpinnings of a lot of the characters, but also Evangelion works as a massive deconstruction of the mecha genre, and in doing so, it actually became probably one of the most popular mecha series of all time, despite being a complete and utter thorough deconstruction of all the different kind of genre trappings that were part of the genre. But I would argue that even, like all good things that deconstruct or even satirize a genre, you don't need to watch the source material to understand and enjoy Evangelion. You don't need to have watched several seasons of Gundam Wing, for example, to enjoy Evangelion, but I think understanding of how it subverts genre expectations kind of makes it even better. It makes it a series that I continue to love revisiting. So this is like one of the few shows where it's actually not based on a manga. The answer's a bit complicated because there is an Evangelion manga which actually started coming out before the anime started. But that was actually due to production delays with the anime. The manga was designed to tie in with the anime and be a kind of like a bit of promotional material for the anime. But the manga went on for many, many years, long after Evangelion finished airing, with the mangaka of the manga being given a lot of creative sway over where the series went. So I've heard the manga's its own beast unto itself, and it only finished relatively recently, I think like in 2013 or something, which is interesting. But of course today we are talking about the 26 episode TV series and the movie follow-up, The End of Evangelion. And just to clarify as well, for any of you hardcore EVA heads in the audience, we watched the ADV Films version, the now incredibly rare Evangelion Platinum DVDs, which I managed to get just before the Netflix version came out, but like after the time when people realised the Netflix version was terrible, so they needed to hold on to those Evangelion Platinum versions because they're really good. And 20 years later, the DVDs still look amazing. The subtitling's amazing. The picture quality is stunning. Until the Blu-ray versions come out in the West, which apparently are happening this year. And whenever those happen, I'm instantly buying them. If you can get your hands on the Platinum Editions, the old Platinum Edition DVDs, they are the best way to watch Evangelion. We didn't watch the Netflix subtitled version. Not gone near it. Not really interested. So that's the version that we watched. So yeah, I mean, Jesus, where do we even begin with this cultural juggernaut?
I guess as per our usual kind of structure, we should talk about the premise of this show. This is a show about a boy called Shinji who is recruited by his kind of distant, absent father to pilot something called an EVA, which is kind of like, it's not a robot, it's kind of like a biological mecha thing to fend off these things that are called alien. No, they're not. That are called angels. Also, I forgot to mention, like, there's been, like, a semi-apocalypse, so that's pretty important. And, yeah, these children piloting these EVA things are kind of like humanity's last stand, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, and they all work for, like, this kind of shady military group called Nerve, so that's pretty important, too. Yeah.
Very.
I think this was one of my better recaps.
I mean, you're not wrong, but they're definitely all those things that do happen in the series. It's also underpinned by, as I said before, a deconstruction of the mecha genre. It's filled with Shinto cosmology, Jewish and Christian mystical traditions, midrashic tales and the Kabbalah, psychoanalysis. It's a very complex series with lots going on thematically, which some people could accuse a bit wanky, to use a British term. Basically, to anyone else, it means kind of like basically a bit pretentious. I just strongly disagree. I call it brilliant and interesting. Mm-hmm. That makes Evangelion a series which is absolutely worth revisiting time and time again. It continues to fascinate me and interest me. Evangelion is famously a kind of series of two halves. You got the first half, which is like a little bit more happy-go-lucky. You know, it sets up the characters, sets up the world.
I mean, I think relatively.
Yeah, relatively more happy-go-lucky. There's still some very dark episodes and dark moments. But it's a bit brighter compared to the second half of the series, where Hideaki Anno kind of was going through some things. And he decided to kind of veer the series off in his own insane direction as he kind of went through like depression and stuff, and his own father issues and all this sort of stuff, to the point where like
it's bleak as all hell.
It's bleak as all hell, and according to kind of like legend, it's kind of what threw the anime production off track, because Hideaki Anno couldn't decide where he wanted the series to kind of go and what he wanted to do, which actually partly be the controversial ending, which we will talk about in detail, was brought about by obvious production problems. As the series gets on, you see the animation being repeated a little bit more, and they're trying to stretch that budget a bit more. But also apparently because Hideaki Anno literally could not decide on which ending he wanted to go with. So in the ending of the series, you get a slightly more optimistic ending, despite everything, while the End of Evangelion, you get a much grimmer ending, depending, or, you know, some viewers have been a happy ending at the End of Evangelion. I disagree. I think it's a bit more complicated than that, but we'll talk about that a bit more.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there in about 3 hours or something.
Join us in the spoiler section.
Yes. So I mean, like, just a bit of background for me. So, like, Evangelion was like one of those like seminal shows. I watched it on YouTube in the mid-2000s when I was really first getting into anime. Everyone said Neon Genesis Evangelion was the best anime TV show ever made. So I checked it out, and my little brain was blown away. I could not believe what was happening. And by the time I got to the End of Evangelion, I remember getting the DVD box set from, must have been like my 14th, 15th birthday or something, and like watching it on my birthday. And I just remember it being one of the most like horrible, depressing, but really enrapturing experience, and both the show and the films have stuck with me well into adulthood. I rewatched the series a couple times between first watching it, and this is probably around my 4th time watching it now, I think. So yeah, it's one I love coming back to, and obviously this is your first time watching it.
My first time. Now, I had heard you talk about this one, of course, years and years ago, and actually, I do remember that I thought it sounded really interesting, and I was actually back then kind of interested in watching it.
Why didn't you say anything?
I think you had just rewatched it.
Oh, okay.
So I knew you wouldn't want to watch it like immediately again, and then it just kind of fell out of my mind. So,
and here we are.
Here we are now. Finally,
now.
I've watched it.
Evangelion, finally. So you know, I mean, it's easy to see why I think the show was so big. You know, obviously, famously, when the show first started to air, it was actually airing during a time slot which was reserved for like kids' TV shows. Like Saturday morning, 9 a.m. kind of thing, which I just find wild.
Yeah.
Because this show is definitely not your traditional mecha series. You know, part of what Evangelion was exploring was, you know, like mecha was so popular like in the first half of the 90s in anime. It really, really did take over the production, really. You know, lots of stuff was being produced. You know, if people think that the MCU is the first time media has been oversaturated by one type of thing, you're far from wrong. It's happened loads of times before. And what was going on with mecha in the anime industry is a really good example of that. So Anno kind of uses this deconstruction of the mecha genre and all the tropes as a springboard to explore life, science, religion, all sorts of different things, while also at the centre kind of having these very human stories about people who simply can't cope. And what was even more interesting, watching it in the year of our Lord, 2021, is how, you know, like, I think it's interesting how, yeah, as Grace said in her very eloquent summary of the premise of the show.
Nailed it.
The characters live in a kind of post-apocalypse, but I like how people continue to kind of live their lives. I would think that's the most realistic type of apocalypse, and it's almost kind of what we're living through at the moment. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, obviously we have a big scary thing going on at the moment, but people are just continuing to live their lives. The world just continues to tick over despite everything. Despite the threat of these angels threatening to attack and destroy the world, they still go to school, people still go to their jobs and stuff, and I find that interesting, especially with kind of what we're going through collectively as a international community in this year. It's interesting about to Evangelion in this year, definitely. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. We've wobbled on for a bit now, just trying to get across, obviously how important this series is, and obviously how influential it is, and kind of a little bit about our thoughts about it. I mean, obviously, as you can probably gather, I love this show dearly. What did you think of it, Grace?
I also loved it very, very much.
Yeah,
yes.
Because I wasn't too sure how you'd react to Evangelion. Because I know in the past with some of the slightly not weirder stuff, but I know for example you struggle with David Lynch films.
Yeah.
And I know the term Lynchian is thrown around way too much, way too easily. But I do think there is an element towards the ending of Evangelion and the end of Evangelion, which is very Lynch-esque.
Yeah.
And I was wondering whether you'd get along with those elements.
I mean, my kind of thing is, I am fine with, as long as it doesn't break its own rules, I guess. So Eraserhead, right?
Yeah.
Love that film. And I think it totally works is because it is weird from the beginning, and it does get weirder, but I don't feel like it ever, there's no, oh, he woke up and it was all a dream, and it doesn't break the rules of the universe, I guess. So, and I think
kind of at the centre of Eraserhead, and I think at the centre of Neon Genesis Evangelion is a emotional human story, which makes sense.
Yeah, which is a big one for me, I think. Very, very much so.
Yeah, at the centre of all this madness, you've got the psychologies of, well, several characters that you really like and enjoy. But obviously at the centre we've got, Shinji Ikari, which I guess takes us on to the usual section of the show where we talk about some of the characters. So, our main character, Shinji Ikari, the poster emo anime boy, one of the most divisive anime characters probably ever created. You either love Shinji or hate him. I think he's a whiny little shit. I've come around to loving him. I think he's brilliant and he's great.
Oh, so that's it. Did you not like Shinji to begin with?
Not really.
Okay.
I joined the crowd, when I was in my mid-teens, I think because loads of people in the mid-90s didn't want to admit that they were closer to Shinji than they wanted to admit.
Okay.
They kind of projected a lot of their own internal dislike of themselves onto Shinji, which is definitely the case with me. Yeah, I look now and I see a lot of myself at that age in Shinji, and I'm like, oh man, I've come a long way since then. And now all I can see now is just a scared, terrified child thrust into this position which never was for him. Never should. Again, interestingly, in lots of mecha stuff, especially in the openings, traditionally they would have heroic shots of the main hero, usually the boy, looking happy or proud or noble astride his mecha. But the first image you see of Shinji is him looking solemn and he's just not there. In fact, you actually don't see the mecha of this mecha show until 30-40 seconds into the opening itself, which is pretty bold and ballsy for a mecha series. So as I said, all I see now in Shinji is I said this scared, terrified child, and I think he's a great protagonist.
Well, of course, I'm coming at this differently. I'm coming at this as an adult, as a woman now a lot closer to my 30s than my 20s.
And we'll go on to this one. Yeah. This time I definitely related way more to the adult characters of Evangelion than the teenage characters.
But I think that affects very much how I watch a lot of these shows. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
If you show me a damaged, traumatized teenager, I kind of instinctively turn into a mother. So, of course, I really loved and cared about Shinji.
Yeah, right off, yeah.
Yeah.
So, to get people up to speed on, who, don't know anything about Evangelion, so Shinji is our main character. He's 14 years old. He lives isolated from his dad, who works for some weird-ass, shady business, which doesn't really know what's going on. His mum is seemingly dead, and he's been living with, his teacher. I think the show says he's living with his teacher, which is weird. Not only does he have the emotional burden of meeting his dad, who basically abandoned him, in the very first episode he has to deal with seeing his dad again after so long, but then also being expected to pilot this giant biomechanical robot thing which can only work on him. No one else in the world can do it. He is in a situation where he literally has no choice but to pilot this terrifying thing that he hates, and has to fight these monsters, which, again, what's interesting about the angels is that, like, they're not like normal big evil aliens, in that, like, each and every single one is harder and harder to kill than the last. I love the escalation.
Yeah.
You never feel like they're on an even keel with these things. Each one throws a new horrifying surprise at them, which is amazing. And we'll talk about the angels, I guess, a bit more as we get on. But
definitely.
But so in the first 2 episodes, Shinji is put into this position where he has got to get inside this thing, reconcile with the fact that his father is reconnected with him, but then all the emotional trauma and all the psychosis and everything all reaches like a bubbling, boiling point, which just stays at that level for the entire series, except for one really heartbreaking moment, which I will talk about in the spoiler section, which is the moment on my rewatch I did a few years ago, where I realised I actually really loved Shinji as a character, but we'll talk about it in the spoiler section.
Yeah.
But Shinji, haters, leave Leave him alone. There's a reason why he is the way he is.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think the fact that the whole piloting an Eva thing is very tied up in his like relationship with his dad, and I think he very much believes doing this is the only way he can possibly get his dad to love him, which, you know, is just heartbreaking on so many levels. And I mean, we'll get to his dad in a minute, because I have some strong feelings about that guy. But
Gendo.
Yeah. But anyway, then next I think we'll talk about a character who I actually like.
That's some Shinji.
Oh yeah, well no, okay, an adult character who I actually like.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which is Misato.
Misato, the disaster.
Yeah, Captain. I forget what her surname is.
Katsuragi.
Yeah, Captain Misato Katsuragi.
Misato is like she's like she becomes like the head of operations, director of operations at NERV. But basically, she's the one who is overseeing this extremely complicated production of trying to take out these angels. Basically, they know the angels are coming, and they put plans in place to fight each one, and Misato is the one who has to operationally lay the plans out and how they're going to like physically do it. I actually love how the show gets into like the minutiae of like how they're going to defeat these things. There was a wonderful episode where one of the angels has like an incredibly high 80 field barrier, basically, which stops them from physical attacks getting through. So what we have to do is you have to power up like a giant rail gun by using all of electricity of Japan. And the show goes into extreme detail about how they're going to do this plan. I think it's awesome. But anyway, so Misato's one who oversees this, and she's a very stern, you know, like kind of well put together adult when she's working at NERV.
Yeah.
And then when she gets home, she gets her pajamas on, she guzzles beer and is a slob. Yeah,
she exclusively seems to eat like instant ramen and other things like that.
Drinks lager on the morning and stuff, and hangs out with a penguin, and like she is the character who I now relate to the most.
Same.
In the entire series.
Same, and I think it is especially nice to get a female character who's like this, still, you know, a competent adult, but like just kind of living the millennial life, you know.
Yeah, she is basically she was like a millennial, like before it was even a word on people's tongues.
Yeah,
you could appear to be a well put together adult during the day, but then at night, you know, I don't do this, and people who present as female do, but you know, you take your bra off, you open up a tinny, and you just slobbily sit down in front of a television.
You let go of being responsible, and you kind of get to be a kid again.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's great.
Yeah, love her.
She's great. Misato is one who, like, you know, again, because she was like an adult character, and when you're a kid/teenager, you have a natural aversion towards adult characters in things. I didn't massively care for her much as when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, I appreciate Misato a lot more, and I appreciate all the female characters in Evangelion. I think it's actually a really good show for female anime characters, which I think even shows today really, really, really could take some notes from this show, I think. But yeah, Misato's great, and she kind of takes Shinji in, kind of becomes like Shinji's guardian, because Gendo's delegated parenting to Misato, which I love. Like, it's a great bit. It's not great, it's devastating, but you know, like, Shinji's trying to call up his dad, and he's trying to say like, oh, but there's like a parent-teacher evening or something going on. And Gendo's like, I've delegated the task of being a parent to Misato.
Stop bothering me.
Stop bothering me. And he hangs up. Like, I love how workman-like it is.
Very strong feelings about Gendo, which we'll get to.
I mean, should we talk about him on him now? Should we talk about him a bit before we talk about the other pirates?
I mean, I guess I feel like there was something else I wanted to say about Misato.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, that was just it. I like that she actually gives a damn about Shinji.
Yeah, she's the only person who really does.
Yeah, in comparison to his dad.
Yeah.
She actually cares about his well-being and his safety and his like his emotional state as well, and wants him to have friends and stuff. And yeah, is Misato best girl? I think she's. I think she's best girl.
She's best girl. Yeah.
Yeah, in the show.
And that's something we should mention as well. Like Shinji isn't a complete like. I mean, he is a bit of a stick in the mud, but he's not a stick in the mud all the time. Like, he does have friends and stuff. Like, we might not get a chance to talk about them, but like, I do actually like his little gaggle of friends.
Yeah.
Toji and the kid with the glasses.
Yeah.
I really like those two, and everyone calls them like the Three Stooges. So he is capable of having friends, and in the right sort of environment, Shinji could be a well put together, happy enough teenager. But obviously, because of everything, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, we might as well talk about the big man himself.
Yeah.
Shinji's dad, Gendo Ikari, who does one of my favourite anime bad guy tropes of putting his like hands like over his face, like menacingly.
Yeah, he does that a lot.
He does that a lot, and that's become such an iconic position for it basically, if you want to establish that this is a anime villain with secrets, you put him in that position, and you instantly get power and authority from them. It's wonderful. So yeah, Gendo is like, I guess, like the head of Nerve, and he's the one who is, he's ultimately responsible for the destruction of the angels and also of the creation of the Evas, and the whole thing is kind of wrapped up like in this kind of complex mystery about like what the Evas are, even what the angels are, what secrets do Nerve have. All that sort of stuff is kind of siphoned through Gendo, and you see throughout the course of the series him like talking in secret about stuff and like plans coming together, and there's some shady business going on in the background. But Gendo himself is horrible.
Yeah, he's like the worst dad.
He's terrible.
Yeah. He's probably one of the worst anime dads.
It's just one of the worst dads in general.
Yeah.
One of the most fictional dads ever.
Yeah.
He is I mean, I can appreciate Gendo more now as like a character, where like, obviously the weight of the entire world is on this guy's shoulders. Basically, like he has to defeat the angels, otherwise the world is fucked more than it already is. But you don't have to be an asshole, dude.
Yeah, there's no excuse.
There's no excuse for being a shitty, abusive dad.
Yeah, he's just like, it's not even just that he's like neglectful and absent. Like he's just horrible to Shinji, like whenever they are together, like
except for one scene which we'll talk about later on. But yeah, I mean, like his relationship with like with one of the other main pilots, Ray, as well.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't endear me to him either, and we'll get to why.
Well, because he seems pleasant enough at first, and then when you find out, and you're like, oh my god, that's so fucked up. There's so much bleeping in this episode, I feel, as well. So.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, like Gendo's horrible, but like in a really like interesting kind of way. Like what makes this man, what made this man the way he was, and I guess it was being partly responsible for the end of the world.
Yeah.
which is interesting, because like we should mention as well that like obviously 15 years before the events of the series, a huge event happened called the Second Impact, which wiped out half of humanity. Antarctica got destroyed. The seasons got all fucked up. Basically, it's either summer or winter. That's something I actually only really picked up this time. I'd never really thought about it much before, but like the seasons are completely messed up.
Hey, maybe that's where George R.R. Martin stole his idea from.
Oh yeah, well, all I'm saying is that I'm pretty sure the first Game of Thrones book came out in 1995.
There you go.
And I'm pretty sure he stole that as an idea. But yeah, so the world of Evangelion, like I suppose similar to Game of Thrones, because of the Second Impact, but the seasons got messed up, so it's either some like part of the soundtrack to this show is the sound of the I don't know how you say it, the cicadas, the locust sound.
Oh yeah, the insect chirping.
The insect chirping sound, which is very, very, very common in Japan. that's part of the soundtrack to the show, and that kind of backs a lot of it. And yeah, you actually at one point we actually go to Antarctica at one point, and you see the Sea of Destruction, this kind of Red Sea, where the continent used to be. The world's messed up, but as I said, one of the best things about it is that like the world just keeps on ticking over. People just keep on living around their daily lives as if nothing happened, which is interesting. And again, that like generational divide thing as well is something I really picked up again more on this time. Like about the lives which the adults of the world, they had to grow up in this horrible apocalypse. The world kind of got back on its feet, while the children that were following live in this kind of rebuilt world. And they're a bit more privileged, and so all that stuff's interesting. But anyway, we're talking majorly soundtrack. We're talking about characters, aren't we?
Yeah, so I guess we've got some more pilots to talk about.
Yes, so the ones who can pilot the Evangelions are known as, they call them like the first child, second child, third child, fourth child. Shinji's the third child. Or, if that's the ADV interpretation, the actual Japanese says first children, second children, third children. I know some fans don't like first child, second child, but it rolls off the tongue better, guys. Just get over it. Like, it's translating.
You got to take some liberties.
You got to take some liberties to make it work with the English language. So whatever. But anyway, the first child is Rei Ayanami, and now we are talking about literally some of the most iconic female characters in the history of anime. I cannot emphasize enough how wide-reaching Rei and the next character is we're going to be talking about. This kicked off the waifu wars.
Oh.
And that's still been talked about today, But obviously it's weird because we're 14. Just remember that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you are 14, it's okay.
It's fine.
But,
just remember, guys, we're only 14 years old. But anyway, we'll talk about the first child, Rei Ayanami.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say there's probably not a lot we can discuss about Rei until we get to the spoilers. But I guess her general kind of demeanor is she comes off quite cold and like very professional, and she doesn't have emotional outbursts like the other kids. She's very collected and calm, and she is good at what she does. But there are some kind of unsettling kind of instances you kind of notice where they're doing like tests on the Eva with her inside, and something goes horribly wrong and people are nearly like killed, and they kind of like chalk it up to it's something to do with the pilot's mental instability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She also goes to school as well. She goes to the same school as Shinji. And all the kids are like, she's just weird. She doesn't talk to anyone, doesn't interact. And then you kind of find out a bit more about her character in the episode. Well, you find out a little bit more, but you don't find out really anything in the classic episode. The ADV translation being Rei 1 and 2, which are like just two classic episodes where you spend a bit more time getting to know her. Like Shinji goes to like her apartment and stuff at one point to give some like school papers, and there's a really awkward encounter between the two of them, and it's an interesting couple of episodes. But yeah, Rei's a difficult character to speak about because it's pure spoilers. But just to say, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But I think she transcends a lot of the mystery, so she's not just like a bit of a mystery box character. I'm generally not into too much those sorts of like characters, like the what I call the like mystery box characters, what's she called in Firefly?
Oh, River.
River, yeah. I'm always a bit like,
yeah.
Okay.
I get what you mean, but
I struggle to see past the mystery and see the character.
Yeah.
While with Rei, I think there is a mystery to her, but you also feel like you kind of get her as a character, especially in the second half of the series.
Yeah.
Where, she discovers that she does care about other people. It's an interesting and very subtle journey, but obviously the one that people remember the most is the blustery, redhead second child, Asuka Langley Soyu, who bursts into the world of Evangelion at around like episode 8 in what the ADV calls Asuka Strikes, and she sure does, where she comes from Germany to basically help fight the angels as well as the second child. Another incredibly popular character.
Yeah, she is. She's great. She is. She is like, you know, she's loud and confident, and I mean, you know, pretty cocky. You know, she's very much built up this idea that she is the best.
You are number one.
She comes across as this, you know, what's the word I'm looking for?
Boisterous.
Yeah, this boisterous, kind of flippant, very like overconfident little girl, and
she's a brat, but like she's
but lovable.
She's very lovable. Yeah.
And you know, she has demons in her past too. So
like everyone in this show, they have demons in their past.
Yeah. It's pretty heartbreaking what happens with her.
Yeah, it's really sad to be honest. Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get there
eventually.
Yeah. But yeah, love Asuka.
Yeah, she's great, and like, you know, she's a great contrast to Rei. And I think that's why people like talking about the great waifu wars, because Rei and Asuka are very different. You know, like if Rei's ice, Asuka's fire, and Shinji's kind of in the middle. He's in the middle of these very interesting, very powerful women. But yeah, like, you know, like obviously kind of part of the show is that, like, you know, it's. I think it's interesting in its approach to its female characters, which I find is undermined by what's happened to Evangelion since its inception, where, like, you know, the female characters, I would argue, with Evangelion are treated very respectfully. They don't really have too much, like, fan servicey moments, and if there is any, it's for, like, a purpose of a plot or to establish something, you know, like in the episode where Asuka gets introduced, Shinji almost sees Asuka naked, you know, getting like changed into her Eva outfit, for example, and it establishes a few things. It establishes a bit about Asuka's character, and how she views boys and like her own kind of like sexuality, but also Shinji's as well. It's really the first time we've really seen Shinji being interested in someone of the opposite gender. So yeah, it establishes quite, you know, if there is any fan service in the show, it is there for a purpose, I'd argue. Or like when Shinji sees Rei naked, for example. Yeah, it's an awkward moment for Shinji, because it's probably the first time he's ever seen a naked woman before. But it also establishes important character beats about Rei. But, like, this isn't a reaction that a normal person would have. You know, like, yes. So, yes, it's there for a purpose, I'd argue.
Yeah, and I don't think the audience is shown too much.
No, it's not meant to titillate.
Yeah.
It's for a purpose, as opposed to a lot of fan service, and especially, unfortunately, with the age of the characters as well.
Yeah.
You know, but then, of course, since then, Asuka and Rei have kind of become like sex icons. They produced models of characters, you know, like produced models of the characters like in positions and in certain outfits, and you're just my god,
they're 14, guys.
They're 14.
Yeah.
Now, blah, 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 age of consent, blah, 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 fighters in the comments, whatever. It's weird, and I think it undermines the show, and I think it demeans the characters.
Yeah.
In a really uncomfortable sort of way, because as I said in the show, I think I would argue that they are all treated with respect. Yeah, because, like, again, like I said, it's, if any, especially like with Misato as well, like there's a little bit of fan serviness.
With Misato, but she is an adult, so she's an adult. It's not, you know, the same.
She's an adult, and again, a part of it is to establish the way Shinji feels about her as well.
Mm-hmm. Which, because I think his feelings towards Misato are kind of complex.
They're very complicated,
because she is definitely acts very much like a parental figure, but she's also like an attractive older woman.
Oh yeah, like Shinji's friends love her.
Yeah, they're
adore
obsessed
her,
with
her.
Yeah, and he's a bit like, oh, you guys don't have to live with her. She's a slob, and yeah. But obviously, you know, there are points where he is perhaps kind of unwillingly attracted to her too.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's an interesting dynamic.
It's a very interesting dynamic between the two of them. So So yes, as I said, you know, like and like with Asuka as well, because like she's like roughly the same age as Shinji. You know, like there's also like awkward encounters between the two of them. But I said I don't feel the show demeans them at any point. And I think the way the franchise has developed, I think unfortunately, you know, it kind of it undermines a lot of, I think, what the show is trying to do. Yeah, so it's interesting, but also like a bad indictment of the way fan cultures can go, definitely. But anyway, that's probably the most controversial part done with.
Yeah.
So who else have we got?
We've got Ritsuko,
yeah, the hot
scientist lady.
The hot scientist lady, yeah.
Ritsuko is also an interesting female character.
Ritsuko is a really interesting character. Yeah. So
she has mummy issues, because nearly everyone in this show has either mummy or daddy issues.
Yeah, so she didn't like her mum, but she has to basically work with her every single day. It's a minor spoiler, but I don't think it's big enough. But like basically, like her mother, like, uploaded her brain to like the computers that Nerve use.
Like her literal physical brain.
Like her literal physical brain.
Yeah.
And then each of the three servers, each of the computers, which are named after the three wise men, which I'm going to have a go at, of being Casper, Balthazar, Melchior. They basically represent the three different parts of Ritsuko's mother's, basically of how Ritsuko's mother felt she was. So one part is the woman, the mother, and the scientist. Mm-hmm. I think that's it.
That's it, yeah.
And that's interesting. And then Ritsuko's got to deal with the legacy of her mum, but then also practically being the scientist who has to see through a lot of these projects. And at first she seems like, you know, like scientist lady, but she definitely reveals layers and is definitely involved in some highly unethical science.
Yeah.
As the series progresses. And she's another difficult one to talk about, I think, in a non-spoiler bit, because Ritsuko is entertaining, but I think she's one where, like on a rewatch, I think you appreciate her character a lot more, and you see a lot more of kind of what makes her tick. I'd also argue the same about another character I know we're going to talk about is Kaji, who is like a long-lost fling that Misato had. In college, when Misato slept with the guy for an entire week and they didn't leave the bedroom. So Kaji's like... kind of like a scruffy, a bit of like a
Jack the Lad.
Kind
you know, flirts with people around the headquarters.
And he's hitting on all the female characters constantly. Everybody loves him. Asuka loves him. You know, Ritsuko, you know, like teases him with his flirting and stuff. But you know, Misato tries to deny it, but she wants some Kaji.
It's things have not. Feelings have not ended between them.
No, and there's like a simmering undertone to him. And Wakaji's kind of interesting because like you never quite really get a sense of like who he actually is, which obviously in a lot of things we'd criticise, but in the case of this I think it works because he's meant to be like a double, maybe even like a triple agent or something. He's trying to find secrets about Nerve, and he's the way that the plot moves along, discovering secrets about Nerve, which...
Also, I think it's funny that, like, it's not really a criticism, but, like, one of the main male characters is less developed than the main female characters, and...
Oh, definitely.
That's quite rare.
Well, I mean, like if anything, besides from Shinji, a lot of the other male characters, you know, like, they are either distant or cold or professional. The only one that Shinji really relates to, besides from like his two friends at school, the only adult male that Shinji relates to is Kaji.
Yeah. Because
Kaji is revealed to have feelings and emotions and things that make him tick outside of his commitment to his work. You know, Shinji finds out at one point that he's got like a watermelon garden, a little garden that he's planting around Nerve headquarters, and he is pretty much the only male character, I'd argue, in the show, the only male adult character in the show who Shinji's ever really able to like connect with, which is interesting because you got Gendo, who's a dickhead.
Yeah,
you've got Fuyutsuki, who's like Gendo's right hand man, and Fuyutsuki seems okay. But again, he's a professional first, you know, like there's a great scene where the members of the Nerve staff are on the train and commuting to work, and Fuyutsuki's there reading a newspaper. Again, I love that the show goes into the casual lives of a lot of like the side characters. Mm-hmm. You know, you get a sense, even though you don't know a lot about them, you get a sense that they have lives outside of Nerve. You know, like you've got one of them, who's like one of the ladies who helps Ritsuko, she's got a cat pillow, so you assume she likes cats. There's a long-haired guy who plays guitar and stuff, and, you know, again, and Fuyutsuki reads the newspaper. So again, this sense of the apocalypse has happened, but people just keep on living their lives. It's a really interesting element. Indeed.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, enough of me for philosophizing.
Yeah.
What other characters have we got, Grace?
I that's everyone I wrote down, because although there are other characters, I feel like they're the ones you can really talk about in depth.
Yes.
I mean, there's another character who shows up near the end, but like he is so spoilery. I think we should probably just save him entirely.
Yeah, I know who you mean.
You know who I mean. Good.
I do.
Yeah. Or maybe just save him for the spoiler section.
So I mean, like, I suppose the last thing we'll talk about with characters, because I don't think if we wrote this down in our notes, but I'll mention it now, is the Evas themselves.
Yes.
Because they are characters unto themselves. The Eva designs are easily some of the coolest, most awesome robot designs ever, in that they look amazing, but there is such a weight behind them. And you get this a bit more like in the End of Evangelion, where the budget is a lot higher, but you get a sense that these things are giant beings and they, you know, slam the earth, and there's such a coolness but such a mystery, and they're kind of terrifying at the same time. I love them. I love the way they look. They're easily some of my favourite giant robots ever committed to anything, really. But I think I'm more of an appreciator of that than
I mean, I will admit I don't pay a lot of attention to like designs of like cool robots and stuff. Like you know, I think they're cool. It's not something I notice particularly. Same as I often don't really notice like particularly good animation and stuff. That stuff, it kind of goes over my head.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So if we're kind of done with characters, then
now we're going to talk a bit about the angels.
Well, yeah, but I am kind of thinking angels are going to fall under
spoilers, aren't they?
Well, I was thinking they're going to fall under the category of weird stuff. Because okay, like Utena, I feel like this show very much deserves a weird stuff category.
Yeah, definitely. So this section now is the weird stuff that happens, or weird shit, if we're doing the uncensored version.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked about like how each of you never really get a sense of an idea of like what these angels are, which is interesting. But what's cool about them is that like, because each one has like a unique power and a unique look, every single episode of this show is slightly different. I love how this show has an overriding story which builds up, but like classic television has strong individual episodes. There are so many strong individual episodes in this show. There's an episode where Nerve loses power and an angel attacks. There's an episode where one of the angels can split in two, and the only thing that'll defeat it is Asuka and Shinji killing each of the halves at the same time, but because they don't like each other, they're not coordinated, so they have to learn to dance and do a dance sequence. There's an episode where one of the angels hacks into their computer, and, you know, like a Nerve headquarters risks having like a huge hack and stuff. And there's also really fantastic just individual episodes, but a lot of the weird shit happens because of the angels. So yeah, like definitely like one of the first. Well, what would you say about like one of the first weird angels?
I liked the one that, I mean, I don't think this was the first weird one, but I really liked the one that had like giant spider legs.
Oh yeah, but that's one that attacks during the when they have a power outage in their headquarters.
Yeah, that sounds So I don't like spiders, and so that one kind of particularly freaked me out.
Yeah, that's weird. Like it sprays like acid out of its eye and stuff. Like it secretes acid out of its eye, which is really unnerving. Unnerving. I like all the ones which basically have like no sense of like looking like anything in nature. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like there's one which is like a giant diamond which goes like ah. I love that sound effect. That's a great one because it's basically like a giant floating fortress. You know, like the first angel that you see, you know, in the first episode looks like a normal monster, and you think that's kind of going to be the sort of thing we're going to be fighting in each episode, but that is swiftly gotten rid of, where each and every single one is like completely different to each other. So yeah, you got the giant diamond one, which is awesome, and then how they defeat that is interesting. I also love the one which basically is like a giant sphere.
Yes, and it's got a shadow, but is the real thing, and the thing that you think was the real angel was the shadow.
Yeah, it's really cool, and it's got an amazing power, which basically like sucks people like into a black hole, which is weird and disturbing. I mean, obviously you got the one where one of the angels hacks into Nerve headquarters, and at first you think it's just some guy hacking in, but it's actually an angel.
Yeah,
which is
or
cool.
possibly a lot of little angels.
Well, little angels, yeah, like
microscopic.
Yeah,
yeah, but kind of like with a hive mind, I guess. Yeah.
You've got one in like the second half of the series which shoots a ray from out, like a rainbow laser beam from outer space, and basically like just mentally like destroys the mind of the Eva pilot. Like, which is just, it's so disturbing. Then there's,
There's one that's like a big ribbon of light that can like infect people and like, or like fuse with people and kind of takes on their form, and it's really disturbing looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's one angel which was like a giant phallus. Where it appears, and Miss Sato says that's the sort of angel that every woman hates. It's like it's a giant penis. Love that one. There's also one which is like a pure ring of light, which we mentioned. And there's my favorite angel is one that we can't talk about until the spoiler section. But but that's it. We're all varied. We're all interesting, and we all have different powers and. You're just like, how the hell are they going to defeat these things? Because you kind of reach a point with Evangelion where, like, you know, it's almost like in Return of the King. I'm going to reference Lord of the Rings now. It's, the start of the film, Sam says to Frodo, like, you know, I've been mashing it, and we're doing okay. And Frodo's like, why? And Sam says, well, I'm doing it for the journey home.
Oh.
And you can tell in Frodo's eyes there is not going to be a return journey home. And then that's like in the first half of the series. In the second half of the series, Frodo drinks the last of the spills the last of the water. In most...
So annoying.
I'll just get that jab in now. Frodo spills the water, and then Frodo's like, there won't be enough left for the journey home.
I don't think there's going to be a journey home, Mr. Frodo.
And that's kind of the dawning realization you have over Evangelion, that this mission and how powerful these how powerful these angels are going to destroy these children.
Yeah.
It's horrible to watch.
Maybe the Earth might be saved, but at what cost?
At what cost? Yeah. At what cost? The complete mental destruction of these very vulnerable children.
And I actually, I also, it's something I do kind of want to get onto a bit more in this section, but I love that they are called angels, because I think it's very appropriate. If you look at how the angels are like described in the Bible, I don't know which book it is. I don't go to church anymore. It probably is Revelations, because that's the weird one, right? And and they're all like, they've got like a million eyes and like a million wings, and they're really scary mofos that you would be terrified if you met one. So I think these kind of very non-humanoid alien things, it is totally appropriate to call them angels. And it's also a bit like in Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials. Okay, they look humanoid, but that's to a human eye, because a human can't really comprehend what they actually look like, which is these strange structures made out of dust. And
which that said is like why I think the angels are so interesting, because they kind of transcend human understanding and appearance. And you're a bit like, again, there are several times of course of the show where you're like, how are they going to be this one? Like, what on earth? Like, and like, what I like about the show is that you don't really get a sense of what these things are. Now, subsequently, I've learned over getting back into Evangelion is that a lot of the lore and plot stuff is explained only in one source, and it's in a Neon Genesis Evangelion video game released on the PS2, which goes into great detail apparently about like the lore and stuff. And you know what? I don't care. I'm not interested.
I think you can, if
you can piece it together a bit.
You can kind of draw some of your own conclusions, but like in a way that is I think it's not just stabbing wildly in the dark. I mean you can do that too if you want, but Like, I think you do get enough to come up with your own, informed ideas about what
definitely.
what all of this is and what it all means. And obviously, we've been talking about angels, but there is a lot of Judeo-Christian imagery in the show.
And there's also reference to like the Kabbalah and stuff, and like there's like the Tree of Life, the Sephiroth tree, and that sort of stuff. And...
Yeah, the angels are predicted in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
It's an actual historical document.
Yeah, in fact, this show actually influenced me to look up the Dead Sea Scrolls,
which are really interesting, aren't they?
Yeah,
very interesting.
Also, there are sections where they're not actually sure what they say, so hey, it's possible.
It's all up interpretation.
Yeah, it's possible.
I mean, obviously, the angels are meant to appear in 2015, and we're kind of past that now, so
But maybe we just didn't notice them yet.
maybe not.
Yeah, obviously then there's the thing where the angels like explode and they form like crosses.
Yes, lots of crosses.
Lots of crosses.
It's not very subtle, there's lots of crosses.
A lot of crucifixion imagery in this show, and I guess this is talked about. Some people think it's a bit wanky and pretentious, and I feel that it isn't, because I think all this kind of doomsday end times kind of stuff that happens in this show, and especially at the end and the end of Evangelion, I think it's very appropriate to use that kind of imagery here.
I think like if you're going to do a show which is basically about the end of the world, like, I think you have to play into that. I think you have to play into that element.
Yeah.
You have to play it up a bit and go as bold as possible. You know?
I mean, you cannot, but I think it's more interesting.
It's more interesting,
to
yeah,
me
much
anyway.
more interesting. Oh, definitely, yeah. Because like I feel like it's done in interesting ways. It's not just like a pretentious shot in a Quentin Tarantino film, for example, where a character like kisses a crucifix before he dies or something, or like in The Room, for example, where when Johnny dies, he's doing like a crucifixion pose kind of thing, It's not like, it's not like that. It is used, I think, to make, it adds to the flavour of the show, I think, where Evangelion is like this weird bubbling mix of like robot action scenes fighting giant monsters with teen drama and angst, and then all this Judeo-Christian, Kabbalah, Shinto, like, imagery and, like, doomsday apocalypse, all mixed into this brilliant, glorious whole, which just makes it Evangelion. We talked at length about even the name, Neon Genesis Evangelion, New Genesis Evangelion, like that idea of, like...
I think it literally translates, I read on the Wikipedia, to New Century Gospel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I think, again, it makes more sense when we eventually get to the end of Evangelion. People can accuse Evangelion of being pretentious all they want. I will always disagree with people putting up big, bold ideas in ways which people can understand and relate to. And lots of the imagery in Evangelion probably goes over my head. But, like, it just adds to the flavour, adds to the interest.
I think it makes it, for me anyway, and maybe this is just the raised Catholic, now an atheist in me talking. But
it says for me, yeah. But I was raised in the Methodist Church, now I'm an atheist now, but yeah.
Yeah, but it makes it all the more haunting for me.
Yeah, definitely, same for me. Yeah, absolutely same for me, yeah. I think anyone who's a lapsed Christian could have an interesting time watching this show.
Yeah.
Because, like, again, like, I watched Evangelion around the age when I stopped going to church with my parents. Instead I opted to be asleep on a Sunday morning.
Which is a fair and valid choice.
Because I was probably up Saturday night playing video games way too late. But, I started watching Evangelion around the time when I kind of stopped going to church and, like, questioning, like, what's my faith? What do I believe in? I think Evangelion is interesting in that regard, because I don't really know what it says about religion. I mean, basically, my interpretation of the show is that, like, as we'll explain in the spoiler section, man tried to get too close to God. There was a form of divine retribution, and now God is back to finish the job via the angels. Yeah. God
is the big bad.
That's my interpretation of the show. Now, I realise that's probably incredibly flawed and it doesn't maybe not add up what happens in the show, but that's always been my incredibly broad take on it, Because, as you find out in the second half of the series and in the end of Evangelion, mankind discovered something incredible, but also brought into question everything to do with the existence of God, the nature of the universe, everything. The second impact was a form of like divine retribution, and yeah, God's back and he's pissed. So instead of his horrible...
that needs to be the tagline.
Yeah, that could be on the poster.
Yeah.
Of all the anime Blu-ray box set. Chris Wilson, God's pissed and he's back to finish.
God's pissed and he's back.
God's pissed and he's back to finish the job. But anyway.
Yeah.
Where are we up to in this rambly discussion?
Well, I mean, I guess I was going to talk a bit about the psychology in this show and the mental trauma that the characters go through, but maybe we should move that into the spoiler section.
I think give the spoiler section.
Okay, so I guess we'll kind of end this section of the
1 hour in.
1 hour in, we'll end this section.
I can't wait to edit this one.
Oh, I know. It's just kind of saying I would really recommend Neon Genesis Evangelion. I don't know if I would recommend it as the first anime you ever watch.
Yeah, probably don't do what I did and watch it as like maybe like the second or third anime you've ever watched. As like, I'm going to sit down and watch an anime kind of thing.
Yeah. You need to build up a tolerance to this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, all joking aside, I do really recommend it if you kind of know what you kind of the sort of thing you get in for with anime. I think it's great. I think you'll, if you're anything like me, you'll probably love it. So
yeah. I mean, it's seconded for me coming from someone who's basically almost like a lifelong fan at this point. Evangelion has stuck with me through thick and thin over the last 15 years, and I've never quite stopped thinking about Evangelion. Every time I watch it, and every time I get to the final moments of the end of Evangelion, I'm like, can anything top this? Is there anything in existence that can top this? I rank the TV show as like definitely one of my all-time favourite just shows in general, maybe even like a top 5. And the end of Evangelion, the movie, which we're going to talk about, we're not talking about it all because you can't talk about it. Live in the film, you can't talk about it in any sort of like non-spoilery way. But I do rank the end of Evangelion as being one of the greatest animated films of all time. I think it's just a monumental achievement in animation and filmmaking, and a satisfying ending to the TV show. But yeah, so I suppose with that then, yeah, let's get on to the main event. 1 hour in, we're going to talk about spoilers.
Yeah.
Okay, lots to talk about. Where do we begin?
Oh, well,
Yeah, but I think probably looking at each character, I think, and then talk about the conclusion.
Oh, okay,
Because we can talk about the mental health of each character.
Yeah.
Alright, cool. Let's start with Shinji.
Okay.
Cool. Alright, so Shinji has a moment, I can't remember which episode it's in, where Gendo, like, praises him for something. Like, he says, like, well done, Shinji. Or something like that. And Shinji really I think it's just before the mid-season kind of break kind of thing. Before, like, the midway point. And Shinji is elated by this.
Mm.
He can't believe that his dad has given him a word of praise, and he thinks this could be it. This could be my inning with my dad. And he gets confident about it, and his confidence boosts. Everyone can see, oh, Shinji's doing alright, yeah. He's really turned a corner, Shinji. Yeah, he's doing really well at the moment. Until he encounters the most terrifying, horrifying angel, which is partly brought about by his newfound confidence because of the boost to his character. I remember when I watched this, maybe like on my third watch, it was one I watched last time before this, like just being devastated. That's when I realised, this is the moment I realised I like Shinji as a character. Where Shinji has his newfound confidence. He's gonna. I'm gonna lead. I'm gonna fight this angel. I can do it. I'm good at my job. This is what I'm meant to do. And then he ends up getting sucked into a black hole and can't escape and has to like face his own like mortality. And like, oh, it's disturbing.
Yeah.
Like, and it completely destroys him. And at that point, he never really recovers.
Yeah, it just kind of goes from bad to worse in terms of trauma from that point. Then like after that, I think not long after that, there's an episode where he has to fight another Eva.
Oh god, yeah.
And he knows because I know the Eva's been like infected by an angel, and it's turned hostile. And Gendo basically says like, just destroy it, just kill it, and implicitly the pilot who's in it, who Shinji knows is another child his age, What he doesn't know is it's also his friend from school.
Like in a great Shakespeare play, everyone else is like in on it. Everyone knows who's in that other Ava except for Shinji, and it like crushes him.
Yeah. Oh, so he won't do it. So
he won't do it. Yeah.
So Gendo like overrides the controls, and they have this kind of thing called a dummy plug, which basically it's like puts the Eva on autopilot. So and it makes the Shinji's Eva just go at this other Eva.
Is that the episode where Eva one like eats the Evangelion or eats the angel? That's in the later one?
I think that's the later one. Yeah,
which is another disturbing moment.
Yeah. But this one, so Shinji can't do anything. He's just sat in there while the Eva is as far as he knows at the time, killing this other kid, and it is really scary and traumatic and horrible, and Gendo is the worst.
And then as it turns out, obviously the other pilot is the fourth child was one of Shinji's friends from school,
which only makes it worse.
It just makes it worse.
But the kid does survive.
He survives.
Thank God.
I think even for Shirō, that's probably way too dark. But like he's effectively dead because like he doesn't appear again in the show after that, and actually. Something happens where, and again, like I think because of the production budget and because of the scheduling and because of the budget cuts, in one of the episodes, and I never even really think about this, but in one of the fights with the angels, all of Tokyo 3 is destroyed.
Yeah.
Like the big like pool of water that Asuka fights the mass-produced Evangelions at End of Evangelion. Is basically the pool that's left behind by the explosion which destroyed Neo Tokyo 3.
I think there is some like dialogue about people evacuating.
People evacuated and like the people on the outskirts survived, which explains how we're able to go back to Misato's apartment. But effectively the city's destroyed and like it's pretty disturbing. Where we're basically fighting on top of this. Like they talk about loads of the show about how these huge explosions are like destroying parts of Japan and have to constantly like redraw the map and stuff, and like all these new lakes are being formed, and it's kind of amazing in that regard. So literally the land itself is being destroyed in the process of this fight. It's again, I think the show does a brilliant job at showing like what a toll this is having like on the world. Like it's literally going to destroy us to defeat these things, which is interesting. But yeah, so poor Shinji never really recovers from this. He just gets worse and worse and worse. And then, like, as the series reaches its climax, all the people in Shinji's life have disappeared or aren't in the show anymore, and he's all by himself. And that's when he meets the final angel, who's called Kaoru, who basically looks like a boy about his age.
I think at first they don't know he's an angel.
We don't know. Did you know he was an angel? What did you find out?
I had my suspicions, not like immediately, but pretty soon. Pretty soon, I was like, There's
something up with this kid.
Yeah, because he's introduced as the fifth child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Shinji thinks he's finally found a friend. There's a very heartwarming moment where like. Shinji's staring out at the lake of a destroyed New Tokyo 3. Again, like, it's not something I really took in until this watch, where, like, Shinji is literally looking out at a wreckage of all his hopes and dreams, literally destroyed in front of him. And, like, he hears with this young boy, like, humming, I can't remember what the piece of classical music goes, humming back to himself, which obviously comes back later in the episode. And Kaoru introduces himself as the fifth child, befriends Shinji and says, in the ADV version, I love you. And it's very gay and people like it. Yeah. What the hell, Netflix?
Yeah.
I know it's not entirely accurate translation to what Kaoru says in the Japanese, but it is basically the equivalent in terms of like the impact of what that's meant to be. And Shinji's had it for the first time where someone says, I love you. It's very powerful, I think.
Yeah, he mentions later to Misato this is the first time he remembers anybody saying that to him, which just...
Poor kid.
Yeah, my heart.
And then, of course, it's revealed that Kaoru is the final angel, the messenger, the final messenger of the angels, and Shinji has to kill him. And it's horrible. It's heartbreaking. Which then leads into the final 2 episodes of the series, which I think we'll talk about before we move on to the movies.
Yeah.
So that's Shinji.
That's Shinji. Asuka.
Asuka, okay. So Asuka, she has to grapple constantly with the fact that maybe, just maybe, she's not the best. She's not the best Ava pilot, And slowly as the series gets on, she constantly feels like she is not number one. As it turns out, there's a complex she's built up over her childhood because her mother killed herself, and it's hinted at that her mother tried to kill her at the same time. So after that, she strived to be strong and be the best at everything in life. And Asuka is literally the result of someone trying to be strong for so long, but then just breaking down.
Yeah, and it's sad to watch.
It's really sad. I think it's the hardest one to watch, to be honest. Especially when you get to her, like, in the End of Evangelion.
Oh, yeah.
It's just horrible. Like, it's so sad. I don't know what to say about poor Asuka.
I know.
But she's got a great episode towards the end, I think, which deals with her complete mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Which is really, really hard to watch, It's got one of the best, most controversial clips in the entire series where Asuka and Rei enjoy a very long, awkward lift scene together, or elevator scene together, where they don't talk to each other. It's partly because the animation budget ran out, it's partly done for artistic reasons, partly done for character purpose, because it just shows the rift that the two of these characters have towards each other. And the minute they communicate, it's like in a big argument. Asuka's like, she's like on a period and stuff, and like she's not having a good day, and then she fights the most horrifying angel, the worst angel for her to face at this point in time, which, as I mentioned earlier, shoots a beam of light from outer space and causes the user to relive the worst memories and the worst weapon an Ava pilot can have faced is themselves, and that's what this angel forces them to do. So Asuka's is hard to watch.
Yeah. And then there's Rei, who we finally figure out Rei's deal. So, I mean, it's not superly explicitly explained. Explicitly explained. I think that sounds like a really dumb phrase, but I'm going with it. But Rei seems to be. She is sort of like a clone.
A clone, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not. Or there have been more than one Rei.
She's basically made from the DNA of Shinji's mom.
Yeah, who died in an accident.
Well, it's a bit more complicated than that.
Well, yeah, it kind of died when they were doing some shenanigans with the Evas, I think, and yeah.
Yeah.
So we kind of mentioned Gendo's special relationship with.
Everyone comments on how close Rei is with Gendo, and it's the only time that they've seen both Rei and Gendo open up towards each other. And you think, okay, what's the deal there? Maybe share some sort of relationship.
Yeah. So the deal is that Rei looks like Gendo's dead wife, but she's still a 14-year-old girl, so it doesn't make Gendo look any better. No,
it just makes him look worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, Rei's some sort of weird clone of Shinji's mum, and Shinji finds out about it in the most disturbing way possible, where Ritsuko morally can't live with the fact that she's created these things a form of human life, basically, that have just been used to pilot these monstrous things. So Shinji and Misato find this out, and Shinji finds out that Rei is a clone, and we don't know which Rei we've gotten to know over this entire time. As Rei, over the course of the second half of the series, discovers that she likes Shinji and begins to empathise and protect Shinji, and then she heroically dies at one point, and you think that's it for Rei, and then you meet another Rei who's in hospital, so you never really get a sense of which Rei are we speaking to. Which one are we speaking to? Which is interesting.
And the episode titles Rei 1, Rei 2, and Rei 3 suddenly make a lot of sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. So that casts light on her disturbing past, and then You find out a bit more about Misato as well. Misato was actually a survivor of a second impact. She was basically there at ground zero, to use a 9/11 term, but she was there at the second impact in Antarctica, but she survived and was traumatized, and she tries to escape the overbearingness of what that means for herself by indulging in promiscuity and trying to escape kind of like responsibility and all this sort of stuff.
And her whole working for Nerve thing is kind of like a revenge quest because her dad was killed in the second impact.
But of course, like everyone in the show, she also hates her dad.
Yeah.
So that makes things complicated.
Yeah, because he sucked too. Surprise, surprise.
Every parent sucks in this show.
Yeah.
You know, like if Shinji and Asuka and Rei are like Gen Zers, and Misato and Kaji are like millennials, then surely the adult population, the older people, you know, all these parents that everybody hates, surely they're the boomers.
They got to be the boomers.
But, you know, but the people who lived, you know. What do you mean you can't afford to buy a house? Sure, the world's been destroyed, there's been a giant apocalypse, and angels are coming to kill us all. But you know, why haven't you bought a house yet? Why aren't you married? Why don't you have children? You know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Misato's got a very sad backstory as well, and everyone's got a sad backstory. It's a sad show, basically.
It's a really sad show. Yeah. So, with all of that in mind, how are they going to wrap this up? How are they going to wrap this up? And you know, there are some pretty cool like previews for the next episode after every episode, and we get to episode 24, and it's kind of like, you know, they're all like, oh well, we've beaten the final angel, but there's, you know, we've got all this great stuff. Look at this great, and they show you kind of like it's like
animatic storyboard.
Yeah, storyboard art. We've got this great fight coming up. Look, it's gonna be great. You're gonna love it. It's gonna be so good. And then episode 25 comes on, and it is like, obviously this isn't literally what happened, but it does feel like they kind of awkwardly like shuffled back on screen, like, yeah, so we ran out of money.
And the creator couldn't decide how the show was going to end. So yeah, we're going to have this slightly awkward clip show with like lots of voiceover. It's not going to make like a lot of sense on a traditional level, and the show's over. So thanks for watching.
Yeah, so I can kind of see why people weren't fully satisfied, because it's kind of like I think you maybe forgot a few plot threads there.
Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so throughout the course of the series, the big goal of Nerve seems to be to bring about the Human Instrumentality Project, which in a long-form way is basically to try and bring humanity back, to basically rid humanity of the wants and the needs, and for us all to live in this like one big being, which the show does talk about a bit in detail about this, where like in compilation with the End of Evangelion, which goes into a lot more detail. But so in the process of basically when the EVA pilots kind of get into the robots, they have to go into a capsule, and they're surrounded by kind of like this goo, this what we call LCL goo, which I think is just like a weird thing, but he's literally is like people. And in an accident, Shinji's mum actually like disappeared into the goo and basically has remained inside the Evangelion because we've got no way of getting her back. So Gendo's motivation is to try and get her back, and the way of doing that is to basically return humanity to like just put everyone in this goo. We'll all become one big consciousness, and we'll all just be, everyone will be happy in this weird, harmonious, like non-existent world, and we'll all be happy together. And you know, it's that idea of like all individual thought and wants and needs and things that kind of make us human, all our flaws, all our foibles, they're all gone in this perfect world where everyone can just float around and
be goo.
And be goo. It's very esoteric, and we're making it sounding sillier than it actually is.
Yeah, it's better in the show.
It's a lot better in the show, because I can't quite explain it, to be honest. And
Primordial soup, which is a real kind of scientific idea.
I think that's the best way of describing it. Is like it's basically trying to like rewind humanity back to becoming primordial soup. Basically, you know, the primordial fluid where humans kind of sprung out of. I think that's the best way to describe it. Let's just reset. We've fucked the world up. so let's just reset everything by going back to being goo and just start again. And we'll take it from there. And that ultimately is the end goal of NERV. They're going to use the Evangelions and defeat all the angels, use the Evangelions to bring about the human instrumentality project. And that's kind of the mystery which Misato uncovers over the course of the second half of the series. And the final 2 episodes from previews that we got from episode 24 are, you're going to see the human instrumentality project in progress. You do kind of see that in the final 2 episodes.
But you won't know what's going on.
It's done in a very esoteric way, where Shinji is like, he's disembodied. The human instrumentality project is going on at the time, basically. And Shinji is having these kind of like these lucid dreams, basically. It's the closest thing I can describe to, like, it's the closest thing I've ever seen which equates to like what a lucid dream is like, where like you kind of like you know you're dreaming but you're kind of awake at the same time. You're in that weird middle ground, and the whole 2 episodes are kind of done like that. It's very arty. It's really inventive use of, I wouldn't even call it a clip show, even though it does use lots of like repeated animation, because it's so masterfully done. Now, a controversial opinion, I think considering what the budget that they're under, I think the final 2 episodes are kind of brilliant. I think they're I think they are a good ending in a way to the series, because basically the final 2 episodes explore Shinji's psychosis.
And I think not just Shinji, but the other characters.
The other characters as well, yeah.
Because you, I think a lot of the time in those episodes, you're not quite sure whose head you are in it. It feels like it moves. Which
is kind of part of the idea that this is the human instrumentality project in full swing. But you kind of, everyone's all one being, so you kind of
consciousness.
One consciousness floating between everyone's different brains and stuff, and it's all very interestingly done. But you know, Shinji loses, you know, all kind of grasp on reality as the human instrumentality project is in its full swing. So yes, as I said, it's very arty. If you're not a pretentious twat like me, you might find it annoying. I think it's brilliant. I love it.
I think it works, but like maybe just with the context of the end of Evangelion.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
I think if I would feel kind of unsatisfied if that was all you got.
But like, you know, like it's not all like, you know, kind of like still frames and voiceover and stuff. Like you do get like a bit of like Shinji basically gets to see like an alternative reality. While like he's happy and there's no Evangelions, there's no angels, it's him and all his friends in high school.
It's a high school AU.
It's a high school AU where Shinji and Asuka are like childhood friends with kind of romantic interests, and then Shinji sees Rei and she's running to school because she's late and she's got toast in her mouth, and Shinji accidentally saw Rei's panties, and like that's dramatic, and Asuka's like, oh Shinji, oh that's not good, and it's very funny, it's very cute, and like it's to the point where like it was so popular that there's an entire manga series that's spun off from just that high school AU, which I think is really cool. But then yeah, like then fairly quickly the show then goes back to kind of like, you know, using storyboards and like sketchy artwork and stuff and water painting, and there's lots of different artistic expression on display,
which is cool.
I think it's awesome. Yeah, I think it's really cool. Which is why I don't think this was like a last minute, like, what the fuck are we going to do kind of thing. Like the way I used to think it was, because now I could appreciate a lot more that there was some clear effort going into making these final 2 episodes. It's not, like, again, Evangelion is amazing, and again, think about this, really pre-modern editing, they were able to do those, like, super fast, you know, those, like, hallucinogenic, super fast cuts that it does, like in the opening, like in the opening song, which not even talks about yet.
We'll get to it.
We'll get to it. But those super fast, like even like less than like second cuts of like all these different characters' faces and stuff, which makes me think a lot more effort went into the ending than a lot of people kind of give it credit for. And yeah, then in addition to that high school AU thing, and then yeah, like the actual ending of the show is Shinji coming to this realization of like it is his failings as a human that makes him human. And I ultimately would argue it is quite a hopeful ending in that, yeah, the human instrumentality project has happened, but Shinji has been able to find some form of happiness when at the end everyone is clapping him saying, oh yeah, omerito, omerito. And even Netflix messed that up as well.
Oh.
It's really easy. They're all saying omerito or omerito gozaimasu. And you translate it as, oh, congratulations, congratulations. And then Toji says, "Way to go, bud." And I'm like, you literally had... I saw that on a screen cap today. Something like that. I'm like, you literally had one job. Just to say congratulations, or variants of congratulations. I mean, it's stupid. But enough of my pretentious, arty, hipster interpretations of the ending of the TV show. What did you think of it?
I thought it was weird but interesting. I think I have more feelings about it with taking in End of Evangelion.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. Definitely, like I think it works better now knowing that this is a good and interesting ending which does things in a slightly different way. But I'm happy that there is the End of Evangelion, which fully ends like the story to the end of to the series and pays off things. So I just view them as just being like alternative endings. You can either take. I used to think that like the ending of the TV series was happening at the same time as the End of Evangelion. You know, when Shinji's like in his comatose state in the End of Evangelion.
Yeah.
I used to interpret it that the events of the TV show were happening in his head.
Oh, okay.
You know, like all the things that was going... But then it doesn't really make any sense because obviously the camera floats to different characters. It's clearly meant to be the human instrumentality project in process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I after watching, I thought it was... Well, when that happens in the film.
Yeah, but anyway, that's the end of the TV show. People were pissed and we weren't very happy. They sent Hideaki Anno death threats infamously.
Which was probably, a bit far.
Extremely far, but
yeah.
Between 1995 and 1997, when the End of Evangelion came out, Evangelion became a cultural zeitgeist in Japan. Captured people's imaginations, became incredibly popular, which then eventually led to Hideaki Anno getting enough sway and getting about 1 million different production companies, because this movie has like about 1 million different production companies involved in making it, to produce Death and Rebirth. See what I did there? The idea of this project was, we're going to do a real ending to Evangelion. It's going to be called The End of Evangelion. The film is going to basically be a summary of the TV series, which is the death part, and then the rebirth part is going to be The End of Evangelion, where literally there are titles to replace that. Episode 25 and 26 are featured in the film. I mean, there's even credits at the end of episode 25.
Yeah.
Credits in the middle of a movie. It's so bold. I love it. But yeah, so the idea of The End of Evangelion is that like this is going to be a replacement to the ending of the TV series. Because I think at this point we've pretty much talked about everything that we can do about the show.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I would. I mean, we'll talk a bit about the opening and stuff, but I think we need to talk about End of Evangelion first.
Yeah, we need to get this out of the way, basically. Okay, cool. So, The End of Evangelion was released in 1997 and acts as a alternative ending to the TV show, and in many people's eyes, the true ending to the TV show. In my eyes, the true ending to the TV show. And it is, without a doubt, one of the most sickening, most disgusting, most weirdest films I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I watch weird stuff.
He does.
I realise that's like a bit of I watch weird stuff, man. And when people say that, they mean like a Quentin Tarantino film. Now, like I've watched weird films. Now, John Waters is one of my favourite filmmakers. I think Pink Flamingos is one of the best films ever made. Like I watched Takahashi Miike. Like I'm into weird, but weirder the better. Like that's always my mantra. Like Greasy Strangler, brilliant. But anyway, that aside, The End of Evangelion is one of the weirdest films I've ever seen. And I love its boldness. I love how it goes to a place which I don't think any animated film or any film really dares to go. It is so visually striking and sickening. Like, at the end of the film, I felt physically ill, like, watching it this time. But it's mesmerising. It's beautiful. It's horrible. Like, it's hard to take your eyes off the screen. So, I mean, what do you think of the movie?
So, I really did have to think about it for a while afterwards, but I settled on I really, really, really loved the movie, as batshit as it was.
It's the ultimate, like, honestly, I think part of the reason why I rewatch Evangelion TV series today is partly because I love the show dearly, but it's also an excuse to rewatch the film, because the film I think is equally brilliant. But yeah, so like the film picks up, straight after episode 24 of the TV series and has one of the best openings in the history of film. Wonderful scene where Asuka is in a comatose state. She's in hospital. Shinji's like, hey, Asuka, he's lost all of his friends. He's had to kill the only person who ever said that he loved him. Starts shaking the bed to try and wake Asuka up. But he pulls her back and Shinji sees Asuka's boobs and proceeds to masturbate. And then you hear these really awkward things of the sound effects of like him, like his like heavy breathing as he's getting into it. And then like he ejaculates, and then he looks at his hand covered in semen and he says, you know, like, I'm so messed up, but I will always be, I am so fucked up. And that's the opening of the movie.
I feel like it needs to be pointed out that it's not as tastelessly shot as you may be shot, but you know, drawn as you may be imagining.
It's not like you don't see. That's said, like the camera cuts away to like, and it is lingering around the room as like as you hear Shinji's like heavy breathing,
and then you get a close up of his hand and like, oh, what's that on it?
And you're like, oh no. Yeah. And that's how the movie opens. Which a lot of people like don't like the way Shinji's dealt in this film. Like people think like he's just like, because people have come around to kind of like him a slightly more like optimistic ending of the TV show. But I think the optimistic ending of the TV show is predicated on the fact that Shinji is basically living in a dream world. Yeah. While End of Evangelion is the harsh reality. Which honestly, I prefer. Like, I prefer it.
I think it feels like a more true, sadly, a more true ending for the characters.
Yeah. Yeah. So the movie opens up not long after the events episode 24. All the angels have been defeated now, and the mysterious shadow company which controls NERV, SEAL, who we don't really get to know a lot about, outside of it being like shadowy men behind giant, like basically like tombstones, are basically going to wipe out NERV. They've done their purpose, and Gendo Ikari's been a nuisance for way too long. He's cost us too much money, wasted too much time. We're going to wipe NERV out. So you have most of the NERV staff killed in the opening of the film. Yeah. On an assault on the NERV headquarters, which culminates in our girl, best girl Misato, being shot and killed before rescuing Shinji. It's so sad. And their departure is iconic, the way they depart. And Misato gives Shinji a kiss, an adult kiss.
Which is a little weird because Misato, he's 14. But,
and then she says, there's more of that later. You'll learn more later. And it's like, oh. No.
I mean, she definitely knows there's not going to be a later for her.
No, definitely not, no. Yeah. No. But then she's killed then. It's very sad. Yeah. But yeah, the whole world starts to fall apart basically. Asuka wakes up to basically pilot Eva 2 as the mass-produced Evangelions produced by SEAL arrive, and they're like this horrible like white like things with like huge mouths and stuff. I love the look of them. Yeah. They're so weird looking. And then Asuka proceeds to have like one of the all-time best just anime fights in general, like as she pilots Eva 2 as she's fighting against the mass-produced Evangelions, and the animation is just it's so fluid and incredible, and there's such a weight behind the Eva and the monsters that they're fighting. Like, just whoever was in charge of doing that sequence is just, where are you? Well done, sir or ma'am or them. Did a brilliant job. And yeah, that makes up basically like a good chunk of the first half of the film. As a human instrumentality project begins to happen, and then stuff gets weird. Yeah. I mean, do you want to have a go at summarising the second half of the film?
Okay, so Ray kind of merges with this alien that they've had kind of like crucified in NERV's basement this whole time.
Yeah, one of the angels.
Yeah. Sorry, I keep calling them aliens, and that's really, really bad because they are quite clearly not aliens, as far as we know. Yeah, this angel that they had been calling Adam, but which got identified right at the end of the series as actually Lilith. I actually love the little bit about mythology about the first woman, Lilith. Yes. I really like that, so I like that they went with that. Yeah, and so she kind of fuses with that, and basically is what actually triggers the human instrumentality project and starts turning everybody in the world into goop. Yeah, that's what happens.
So, like, yeah, there's, like, an amazing moment where, like, part of, like, doing the project is basically, like, crucifying Eva 1, and Shinji gets lit into the sky. Because, yeah, there's an amazing scene where, like, the mass-produced Evas basically, like, massacre Ava 2. Like, completely rip it apart, eat it and stuff, and destroy it completely.
But presumably kill poor Asuka along with it.
Yeah, that's what we led to think, yeah. And then they lift Ava 1 into the sky, crucify it, And then, so Rei merges with Lilith and becomes like this giant white being which like towers over the entire world. And Shinji sees it, and rightly his reaction is just to scream into the void.
Yeah, which, same.
And that's when the imagery starts to get weird. The Sephiroth tree's recreated from the opening of the anime. That's recreated as the mass-produced Avas like hanging in the sky. And then it turns into Kaoru briefly, and then Shinji kind of gives into like his kind of carnal desires. And then the Human Instrumentality Project begins as every single soul, every single person in the entire world is basically ripped from their bodies, turned into goop, as everyone becomes one being. And you see all the rays basically going up to the characters. And I like how when the characters have been turned into goop, they see the person that they desire the most in front of them. So, like, you know, Fuyutsuki sees Yui, Gendo sees Yui. The computer hacker girl sees Ritsuko because she's like a senpai and all that sort of stuff, and they kind of caress. And then as they turn into goop again. I remember when I first watched that, I was just like, "What is going on?" Because I did not pick up on the hints throughout the TV show. Like that was the plan of the Human Instrumentality Project, which like it is clearly talked about in the show. It just happens really quickly, and it's played over this song, "Come Sweet Todd,"
which I think means "Come Sweet Death."
Come Sweet Death, which is like I described it to Grace as being like the emo Hey Jude, and then Shinji then like gets encased like in this cross, which becomes like the arc basically to protect Shinji. And then while inside, Shinji has kind of a similar sort of monologue to the one he has at the end of the TV series. Goes through a very like esoteric montage, and at one point goes into the real world, into like live action footage. And there's a shot of a cinema which apparently was filmed during a screening of Death and Rebirth of a Japanese audience watching it. And then the Japanese VAs appear at some point as well, like the voice actresses for Shinji, Asuka, and Rei. Which is cool. And then they cut down like a busy alley, and there's a few Evangelion cosplayers, well, probably people dressed up like the characters, and it's weird. And then Shinji reawakens in this world which has been completely destroyed as the giant Rei kind of gets like discombobulated and parts of it start to fall off and stuff. And the head, I love the look of it where like the head like hangs in orbit basically, so you can see it from the sky. It's kind of like some of the slightly like, and I hate bringing up this film in a podcast about one of the best animated films ever, but like in Rogue One, like the way the Death Star like is like hanging above the planet, it's like an orbit kind of thing. It's a bit like that where Rei's giant head and arms are like stuck in orbit basically, and it's just the most disturbing imagery in the whole I've ever seen really. As everyone's basically effectively been killed. There's a slightly hopeful element to it because like they talk about like how people can, if they want to, escape from this world, but only if they have like the absolute desire to do it.
To turn back into a person.
To turn back into a person and accept that the world is a horrible place, but the way we act and live is what makes us human. And then there's an amazing shot at the end where Shinji and Asuka are on the beach together as the entire world is like fucked up, like there's rivers of blood and stuff, and Rei's discombobulated head is in the sky, and there's like a starry night, and because of like the blood spray from like Rei being killed at the end, like it's almost like a blood rainbow across like the moon and stuff, like it's stained the moon. It's crazy talking about it, and it sounds like the most like stupidest thing ever, but when you watch it, it is done in such an artful and interesting way. We just get completely absorbed into it. And yeah, so like Shinji sees Asuka for the first time since the opening of the film, and like tries to like strangle her and stuff, but then realizes that he can't go through with it, and because I think Shinji partly does it to try and like wake Asuka up, and the only way he knows how to do it is through like enacting something painful. And he starts to cry, and that's kind of what wakes Asuka up. And then my interpretation is that Shinji and Asuka basically become like the Adam and Eve of this new world.
They're actually like, I guess, the first to come back out of the
first one come back out of the goop.
Yeah, to come back from primordial soup. So
yeah,
they are quite literally Adam and Eve.
Oh,
yeah,
it's a weird film.
It's a very weird film. So I guess you kind of talked before about your kind of ideas about like what's really going on throughout all of this.
Yes.
So I have my own, which I don't think necessarily conflict with yours.
Yeah, go for them.
But I guess my kind of feeling is like it's so obviously they talk a lot about the second impact, but the first impact was the one that wiped out the dinosaurs, probably meteorite or whatever that did that. So and you know they talk about how the second impact and the coming of all the angels was predicting the Dead Sea Scrolls. So my kind of feeling is that like it's like the you know, the wiping out of the dinosaurs. The second impact was something that was always going to happen because humanity's time had kind of come to an end and it was time for the next stage of the world. Like with the dinosaurs had to die to make way for humanity eventually, but humans kind of survived the second impact, so it's kind of like and maybe the angels were what was meant to replace us, because then there's also some interesting lore about how humans and the angels have actually come from the same lineage. They're just kind of like different versions of what we could have been. Yeah, so it's kind of like just the finishing up the job, wiping out the humans.
Well, I mean, like, either that or like the human intermentality approach is almost like a safety case to keep humans safe whilst God enacts his wrath upon the world, and then everyone's protected basically until it's all over, and then people can emerge out of the goop when we want to.
Oh, so it's like
maybe that's another...
yeah, that would make it kind of like the
Ark,
the Rapture.
The Rapture, yeah.
It's kind of like the Rapture then.
Yeah, all the believers all, you know, like, yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of...
There's lots of interpretations.
A lot of interpretations, and I think you could be here all day having fun with ideas about what all of this was about.
I mean, but the long and short of it is that the End of Evangelion is brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, I loved it. I don't think there's ever been a film that's achieved what the End of Evangelion does in terms of its imagery and the music and the editing and the animation. Everything about it, like, it's such a monumental achievement in animation and just in filmmaking in general. I don't think anyone has ever simulated the nightmarish feeling you have whilst watching this film. It's not comfortable. We watched it on a Sunday afternoon when most people will sit down and watch The Searchers or something, or, you know, like a Western or whatever. You know, it's not a film to make you feel good, but it's an amazing experience just as by itself, and I think more people need to appreciate. People are coming around to liking it now. When it first came out, it got very mixed reactions. I mean, part of it was kind of like, you know, like Gen X has been like, oh man, oh, it's like trying to say things, man. We don't like that, whatever. But since then, people I think have come around to recognising it as being like one of the premier achievements of Japanese animation, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree.
Oh boy.
So I guess this is turning out to be a very long episode, so I guess we should start wrapping things up. Now, normally we would talk about ranking openings, so there's only one in this show. But you know what? I think it might be my favourite opening of any anime that I've seen so far. Yeah,
A Cruel Angel's Thesis, of course, one of the most iconic anime openings ever. Like, everyone knows this opening. It's amazing. It never gets old. The song's great. You know, you've heard it all before. The song's great. The imagery's great. The editing's amazing. Perfectly encapsulates the show. You've heard it all before. Like, it's amazing. Like, it never gets old.
Yeah.
But of course, as well, because on our versions, it keeps the original endings, which is Fly Me to the Moon, and various different variations of Fly Me to the Moon.
Mm-hmm. It's also very cool.
And I think it's a crime that Netflix couldn't get the rights to Fly Me to the Moon. Partly why I didn't want to watch it on Netflix, because I was like, Evangelion cannot end without Fly Me to the Moon. It has to end with Fly Me to the Moon. Like, it's such an interesting contrast to what's going on in the show, I think. And the way, like, it's a good way of, like, seeing the show evolve. So it goes from, like, standard versions of the song to more, like, samba versions when Asuka gets introduced. And then as the series gets darker and more depressing, you get more instrumentals and stripped back versions, and it's all very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my god, nearly 2 hours.
Nearly 2 hours?
I should mention as well, we're recording this on one of the hottest days of the year, and we are, like, sweltering.
Sweating bullets here.
I'm sure we could go on for another hour, but I think we'd probably keel over.
Yeah.
So we might as well try and finish this up, basically.
Yeah.
Final thoughts on Neon Genesis Evangelion.
It's great. It's depressing as hell, which is probably going to be, like, why I don't rank it at, like, the very top, as we're going to see.
Yeah, you've got to be in a certain state of mind to watch Evangelion. I think if you have going through any sort of shit, Like, it's not a show you should probably watch. But if you're in an okay frame of mind, like... But, then again, some people could probably maybe find solace in it, like... I think the problem with us as a society is that, like, we're always told to be happy and not really explore our sadder feelings. I went to a bit of a tangent here, but I went to go see Steven Wilson a few years ago, who's one of my favourite, like, modern prog artists. He's brilliant. And he's basically like Radiohead, but through the lens of like Pink Floyd and Genesis and Yes. And like you talked in the set list, people always say, "Why do you write such depressing songs, Stephen? Like no one's going to listen to this music." And he was kind of like, "Yeah, my songs are sad, but look at us all here tonight. We're all taking solace in each other's kind of sadness and feeling sad. There's something kind of beautiful about that, about kind of feeling and exploring those emotions together. I don't think we should shy away from exploring when we're feeling sad or feeling blue. It's just as important as when we're feeling happy, and there's a time and a place for sad songs and sad movies, and in this case, sad TV shows. Evangelion is a sad show, but in its sadness and its bleakness, I think it gets to a real humanity and about the struggle that people go through on a day-to-day basis, and we ultimately have to face up to and accept that yes, we are going to be sad because that's what it means to be human, but if we try and run away from that, we become less human, like Gendo, and like what Shinji's going to become. Gendo and Shinji are two sides of the same coin, basically. Shinji could easily become someone like Gendo and cut himself off from his emotions and not accept what it means to be human, but in both versions, really, in both the ending of the TV show and in the end of Evangelion, Shinji ultimately has to accept that the world is a horrible, cruel place, and all we have is each other, and we have to live up to that, and we have to accept that, and just do the absolute best that we can, and do what, makes us happy. And I think there is a beautiful melancholy to Evangelion. So yeah, I love it. I'm going to go on to rankings.
Yeah.
But I'd easily rank it as my favourite anime. Like, I don't know if anything's going to top it, to be honest.
Oh, that's more than fair. I loved it too. It's like I said, I'm not going to rank it at the top, but it ranks very... Well, you're going to see it's going to rank very highly for me.
Yes, we're going to rankings now. It's the end of the episode. Thank you to anyone who's still here.
You're nearly 2 hours in.
We're 2 hours in. Thank you for listening to basically the thing that I've wanted to talk about for years in like some sort of like structured format, and I'm glad to finally be able to get out 15 years worth of feelings about Evangelion into one stream. So thank you for my indulgence. But yeah, let's go on to rankings. You go first, G.
Okay, well, I think I am going to change my rankings a little bit from last time. Basically, the more I sat with Utena, the more I liked it, so taking that into account. At the bottom we have Death Note, then it's going to be Demon Slayer, then it's going to be The Promised Neverland, then it's going to be Gurren Lagann, and then I think My Hero, and then I think Snafu, and then I think Revolutionary Girl Utena, and in third position is where I'm going to put Neon Genesis Evangelion. Full Metal Alchemist number 2, Brotherhood number 1.
Okay, and so mine now, starting from the bottom, we have Death Note, followed by Demon Slayer, then Promised Neverland, Full Metal Alchemist 03, Gurren Lagann, My Hero Academia, Revolutionary Girl Utena, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, my teen romantic comedy Snafu, my number one favourite, and I don't know what's going to displace it, is Neon Genesis Evangelion. Oh lordy.
Ooh, yeah.
What an episode. Well, I mean, hopefully next time there'll be a slightly more like more to the point episode.
Yeah.
So we've done a couple of things. There's going to be a bonus episode about my teen romantic comedy season 3, which I got around to watching. Spoiler alert, we liked it. It was good. Very nice ending to the show. But then our next kind of show we're going to talk about as part of the podcast series is going to be Mob Psycho 100, a show I've heard a lot about and I've not watched before, by the creator of One Punch Man, which I love. One Punch Man, or at least the first season I love. So yeah, we're currently watching Mob Psycho 100. It's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of at a point now where the character's starting to click with us. So we'll near the end of season 1 at the moment of this recording. We'll finish season 2 probably next week, and we'll talk about that. So yeah, next time is a show which ostensibly so far is a bit lighter than Neon Genesis Evangelion.
I think we needed that.
We needed that. I mean, obviously Mob Psycho 100 has some go to some like dark places, but it's definitely not as wallowy in it as Evangelion is. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
See you next time. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of Where There's a Weeb, There's a Way. If you liked the show, make sure to like, rate and subscribe to us. You can follow us on Twitter @ThereWeeb, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time.